Imagine selling your recruitment business during COVID. In today's episode, I talked to Ian Simkins, who went from graduate recruiter to doing 15 years at a corporate PLC to moving cities where he set up his own recruitment business in the food and drink industry, and in 2021, during COVID, executed a management buyout. In this episode, I learnt loads about what it takes to build a business in that industry and then sell it to the staff. Thanks for tuning in, and I hope you enjoyed the episode. Well, this morning it's my absolute pleasure to welcome Ian Simkins to the sofa. Welcome, Ian.
Thank you. Morning.
Good morning. Good morning. So, Ian, the reason that I'm so delighted to hear this morning to talk about your story is in 2021, during lockdown, at the end of towards the end of COVID, you managed to execute a management buyout for the recruitment company that you'd formed some 12 years before,
Yeah, that's
Silven
right. Yeah.
Recruitment. So, could you tell the listeners how you got to the point of, to that exit in 2021? What was the build up to that? Where'd you been before, and how did you get there?
Yeah, no problem. So, if I sort of go right back to the beginning,
Mm.
and the reason become evident, I started in '96, which makes me feel really old. Phone, Yellow Pages, Rolodex, that sort of stuff. Small business in Halifax, Crossley House Recruitment. Fast forward a few years, that became part of a PLC, Quantica. I was just a consultant at the time, sort of going along with the journey, having a lot of fun. Again, if we fast forward to 2012, there'd been a number of changes within that PLC. I was now director of a division, running a number of offices, again, having a lot of fun, and just enjoying that sort of time in recruitment as things were changing quite fast. But there were a few changes in the PLC at that time. A couple of new chief execs came and went, changed of strategy, and it became evident that our division wasn't core to
This was
that
food and
business.
drink.
Yeah, it's food and drink
Yeah.
manufacturing, which is all I'd ever done, and no thought behind that. It's just the first job I got when I graduated, basically.
Yeah.
And it was brilliant, and I loved it, and I still do. 'Cause it's a great market. But so my old boss Glenn and I thought, well, now or never sort of thing. Shall we set up on our own? And so we did, and we were lucky enough that at that time there were 5 or 6 people that sort of were keen to come with us.
Okay.
For one reason or another. So we needed some investment at that point. Did the rounds. Our very first MD offered us the investment that was, because we're burning a lot of cash. We're bringing people over on the same salaries, and we were keen to go quite quick. So we set up with our original MD's investment, Rob, and he backed us, and credit to him, and he was brilliant. And that was the start of Silven, really, in 2012. I moved over from Leeds to Manchester. I'm from Birmingham, but so I've no massive affinity to Leeds or Manchester. But there's a team over here. Time to try something. My wife's sister was living in Didsbury. We had a 2-year-old at the time, so we just upsticked and moved over and thought, why not?
How was that conversation in terms of we're going to move from Leeds across the Pennines into Manchester?
Yeah, so it was. So my wife went to uni over here in Manchester. She's from the Midlands actually as well, so she wasn't bothered. She's got a real affinity to the place. Her sister was here. Our eldest was only 2, so it was quite easy. He didn't know any different. And I was like, yeah, let's give it a go, another city. And then we just did it. The most difficult thing actually is my wife had to commute to Hull from Manchester,
Right, okay, yeah.
which was a bit tricky for a while.
Yeah.
Until she got another job. But without doing that, we wouldn't have been able to set up, because we set up and really, really reduce what we basically weren't paying ourselves for a period of time, because you can't when you set up. So the support from my wife to go to work and go to Hull meant that we could do that until we got the business up and running, because we were super conscious of not burning through our old boss's money. I mean, the pressure was probably the most pressure in the whole of the time of running Silven, and even at Quantica, was that first 6-month period of any business, when you need a deal, you need the cash, you need the invoice paying, and having to sit down in board meetings every month and seeing that bank balance go down and down and down, because the salaries were way higher than what we were bringing in for that first period of time.
I remember when we set up Walker Smith, the very first board meeting we had, I think I've said before, we did it as a joint venture with Hamilton Bradshaw, which was sort of James Carn's investment firm. And in the first board meeting, our GP line was £60. Having done a couple of maybe paid a couple of contractors the week before the board meeting, and our cost was 70 grand for that
Wow.
first month. Combination of, we did pay ourselves salaries, and there was a management charge for Hamilton Bradshaw. We'd had a couple of people on, so yeah, there's nothing quite like seeing that written down in that sort of way to sharpen the mind, isn't
It
there?
is, and it's something that you don't anticipate really, and as much the pressure as much from when you've come from a place where you're paid, you've got targets, and it's about growth.
Yeah.
To suddenly, actually, if this doesn't work, it's people's livelihoods, it's other people's money, it's the fear of failure, which I think is a much bigger driver and motivator than anything else anyway. Um, but it sort of drove us on, and despite the pressure, it was a lot of fun.
Mm.
As we started up, and I hadn't been on the tools for ages, neither Glenn, and we just like threw ourselves in. I picked up contracts straight away. I'd never done it before, so I made it up as I went along. And at first, I'm not sure this is going to work, and people saying, "Don't do it, Ian, it's not working," because you get one runner out, and you're like, "Okay, great, it's 150 quid a day margin." It's like brilliant. You get a 10 grand fee. It's a 10 grand fee.
Yeah, yeah. Cash
So
in the bank, isn't it, as well? Yeah.
yes, so it took a bit of getting used to, but when it got going, I think I probably, when I look back and I speak to people now about it, is I was I was probably the reluctant one to grow as quickly on the contract side
Okay.
because I don't know, maybe too nervous, maybe risk averse at that time. As I'm not sure we're going to have enough jobs and we're going to have enough candidates, and I was completely wrong. Fortunately for me, Rob and Glenn were right, and they said, "No, Ian, you've got this," and they were right, and it was me that sort of slowed it down at first.
And I suppose that the flip side of that fear of failure and that pressure is that when it goes well, you know, you're benefiting fully from that as obviously an equity owner of that business.
Yeah, absolutely. And but the thing was, I think time moves so quickly in recruitment anyway. I mean, you live by the weeks,
Mm.
you live by the months and the quarters, and suddenly I used to joke all the time, it's nearly Christmas because before you know it, it's like, how have we got here? I mean, even this year, you know, we're almost in August,
Yeah.
and you blink and you're through to another year. Um, but it was never really when we set up for Glenn and I about suddenly going, we're going to set it up and try and sell. When we set up, that was never our goal. It was to build something that people had pride in the badge. We used to talk about pride in the badge all the time. To um, to make a business that the competition were wary of and wanted to talk about, and to steal market share, and that was all we wanted to do. Um, and everything else would look after itself. And along the way, we got better at having fun because we'd come from a fairly straight PLC environment that was, when I now speak to other people and the environments they were in, and things they did versus ours, which was very corporate, very straight, shirt, tie, suits, all that sort of
Yeah.
stuff, which was fine actually. I enjoyed it. It took us a while to relax into running a business and knowing that we can make decisions. And again, I look back now and I laugh. My sales director who did the MBO with, he was the one that came to Glen and I and said, "Why are we all coming to work in suits and ties still?" And I said, "Oh no, you've got to. It's recruitment.
Yeah.
I mean, it's 2013, 2014. It's not 1984."
Yeah.
And so it took a while for me to relax into the role of going, yeah, we can do this if we want, and it's fine because we can do sort of what we want because it's our
It's
business.
yours, yeah, and I think that's amazing, isn't it? That sometimes you're so used to doing certain things, you kind of forget why you're doing them. So
Yeah,
like turning up in a shirt and tie, say exactly the same as you. My previous business, I'd always done that. So when we started Walker Smith, it's all shirt and tie, and bit by bit, the staff's kind of come to you and say, "Can we have dress down
yeah.
Friday?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm not sure," It's like, then eventually you sort of give dress down Friday, and by the end, obviously, certainly through COVID, there was a real relaxation of a lot of things. I think dress code was one of those things like, why am I forcing my
Yeah,
sort of view or the view I thought I had onto the staff when actually they want something different? Yeah.
absolutely. Especially, it was more thinking that clients and candidates would not respect you as much.
Yeah.
Um, and it sort of it made no difference at all, really, especially in the market we were in. We were in a food manufacturing marketplace, which is brilliant. So we're going out to factories and, you're putting on the whites anyway, you're putting on the hairnet, you're putting on the snood, you're putting on the covers for the shoes and things like that. So it's not glamorous. I don't think anyone looks good in a hairnet anyway. So it didn't really matter. So we changed from sort of saying we have to turn up and look super smart 80s style yuppies to asking them, going, what should we turn up in? And they're
Yeah.
like, come in a t-shirt, come in jeans, you go around the factory. I don't need to get water all out. And it's like, okay, that's absolutely
Yeah.
fine. It was like, just ask people.
What my good friend Mike McNeil will tell you this story better than I can, but he was working at an agency, and we were going to meet some contractors on site in Alder Hey when they were doing up the children's hospital, and I turned up with a three-piece suit with sort of some boots. It was obviously a construction site with some boots I bought from Sports Direct the day before. So I think the sort of the 20 sort of I'm not going to call them rough and ready. The hardy contractors that went to meet, I think they took one look at me and thought, "Who's this? Who's
Yeah.
this
What's
dickhead?"
he
But
doing?
yeah, exactly. But anyway, we managed to convince him with a bit of straight talking. But yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Anything behind the name Silven? Was it?
Yeah. So, I mean, it was quite interesting. So first of all, I remember we went to a pub in the Northern Quarter with the people we were setting up with. I thought we're going to choose a name, have a few beers, and we'll come up with a name. We did that. We chose a name. Everyone woke up the next day and went, "That was a terrible name."
What was it? Can you
It
remember?
was Red. I think it was Red Kite or something like that. I mean, it didn't even have. We couldn't even get the URL. There was no. We couldn't. It was
Yeah,
just. I don't know why we come up with that, but it's quite a fun afternoon.
yeah,
So we said scrap that, and we
yeah,
were going around in circles, and I didn't anticipate how difficult it is to pick a name because we wanted to have some sort of thought behind it, pride in it. You needed to get the URLs and all that
yeah,
sort of
yeah.
stuff, and God, that's difficult. And it took ages, and eventually, Glenn, my business partner, who sadly is no longer with us, he was a huge fan of like mountain biking and hiking up mountains and
Okay,
things. And his favourite mountain is the Silven Mountain in Scotland, but it's spelt Silven.
okay.
And so we went, we can get Silven, Silven. So we went, let's do that. And we put our branding like the shape of the mountain. There's some thought behind it. There's a meaning to the name and all this sort of stuff. But it was just a bit different. And it was like, it's my favourite mountain. We can sponsor some of the trails. We can do this sort of
Hmm.
stuff. And then when, fast forward, when he sadly passed, the whole business, we climbed it
Oh,
for the British Heart Foundation because he had an unexpected heart attack with his wife. Raised loads of money for it, did the mountain, and it was a nice sort of thing to do and fitting sort of tribute to him as well because it was his favourite place, name of the business, took the whole business there and
hmm.
did that. So it was a nice way to sort of pay our respects really.
And was that post the transaction that you then passed
It
away?
was, it
Was it?
was, yeah, it was. Unfortunately, it wasn't that long after. Really, it was. I mean, I can't remember exactly, but it was within 12 months.
Oh,
So it was, and he was 10 years older than me. So I'm 50 this year. I was 50 this year. Sorry. So this was a few years ago. So he'd have been like only late 50s. So it's
really?
completely
And
unexpected.
climbing mountains are presumably fit and sort of
Yeah,
yeah,
it was. I mean,
active.
he
Yeah.
lived up there. He lived up in Scotland with his wife, and yeah, it was super fit. It was just, I think, a hereditary thing, one of those things unexpected. So very very sad, but it was a nice tribute,
Hmm.
and yeah, it was nice to do that for his wife and his kids as well.
Yeah, well, one of the things we've talked about before on this show with other guests is getting to the end of a journey where you exit a business and then finding some purpose after that. But there's those horrible stories where people have worked, for 10 years, built
Yeah,
something significant, presumably got the monetary reward for that, and then within a couple of years, they're no longer with us, which is
yeah,
makes you realise, doesn't it?
it does, yeah, and I think also it gives you perspective
Mm,
to enjoy things along the journey and along the route as you're
mm,
doing it. And I think when I look back, we probably not probably we didn't enjoy it as much at the beginning as much as we did further down the road. I mean, I remember I look back now, and you used to have all your old accounts and everything, and I think, geez, we were doing well,
mm,
and we started off really quickly. I mean, it helped that we had a really experienced team that knew what they were doing,
yeah.
and we were lucky enough for clients to come with us and back us and say no problem, we'll come over with you and all that sort of stuff. And we didn't do anything. We stuck to all our covenants. We did, and we were and to this day now, I say to everyone that never break anything like that because it'll come back and haunt you.
Mm,
Stick to what you've agreed to.
mm,
Time goes quickly. You don't have to do anything underhand because it's fine. Naturally, it's a good experience to go and get new stuff. It's a good
mm,
experience to get new clients, and if you've got good relationships, people will wait and come back
mm.
if they respect what you do. So we started off really well, but I don't think we sort of took a moment to go, actually, we're doing all right here. We
Mm.
just were like, what's next? What's next? And even, I mean, I think it was 4 years in, we won. We hadn't even entered it. It was I think it was Grant Thornton or something like that, or Ward Hadaway,
Mm.
the fastest growing businesses in the Northwest, and we won the small one and the main one
Oh, really?
in the top
Mm.
50. And so we won the whole thing, and I didn't even know it, that we'd been put into this, because they got it from Companies House based on turnover and profit and the growth of it. And they said, "Oh, will you come to this awards?" And I was like, "Yeah." And the day of the awards, it's quite funny. Me and my sales director who did the MBO, we went, and it was snowing like ridiculous in Manchester. And I remember them ringing me the day before going, "You're still coming, aren't you? Still coming?" I'm like going, "Yeah, well, it depends on whether or not you need to come." And I
Yeah.
thought nothing of it.
Yeah.
And it was like, "Oh, we won it."
Yeah.
But even when we won that, it was like, "Yeah, we won that." Put it in the drawer. We went for a burger, and that was it. These days, it's all over everywhere. But we didn't
Yeah.
stop to breathe. And you look back and go, we should have enjoyed that early bit a bit more.
Yeah. And I think yeah, you're right to highlight that. I think it is because, like you say, that fear of failure, the stress. Yeah, same as with us, other people's money that you use
Yeah,
at certain junctures. You've employed people, you've
yeah,
bought people out of well-paid
yep,
jobs where
yep,
they're secure and things like that, and they've come to work for you. So that pressure, I think, yeah, I think it's understandable that you perhaps don't um, celebrate in the way that you perhaps do once you relax into it and you realize, yeah, we've got something here.
yeah,
You perhaps do relax into it a bit. But yeah, that's very common, I think. So by 4 years in, you winning awards,
yeah.
doing really, really well. Jump us to the end then. So by 2021, what sort of numbers is the business doing? So headcount,
Yeah,
sort of
so
turnover, that sort of thing.
we we had about, exact numbers of people. I always say it's about 20.
Right. Okay.
So it's not huge numbers. But our contract team were doing fantastic. I mean, ironically, one of the things I would do differently is, one, not selling the pandemic, because that was mental, and two, waited for the year after, when the whole recruitment industry got a huge
Yeah.
jump, and Silven did as well. We had a fantastic, the year after was unreal, and should have waited for then, but hindsight's a wonderful thing. But from memory, we were doing 7-8 million turnover. GP was dropping down to, I think it was 9-2 million. And profit wise, I can't remember exactly profit wise, to be honest. It was probably 40-50% GP, something like
Okay.
that.
Yeah.
So we were doing okay. And that was in COVID.
Mm.
So this was, we were trading well during COVID. So I thought, well, this is fine. Nothing's going to change. It might drop a bit, but we had a massive uptick because I was still there, and still for the first 12 months properly still running it, really. The second I wasn't. I was in the background, and probably a bit of a pain in the arse to the guy that had bought it and everyone
Yeah.
else, because I was sort of hanging around a bit. So time for me to exit, stage left at that point. But I should have waited really to come out of that. But COVID was strange times.
And food production at the time, as I remember it, there was challenges around getting things, deliveries and things like that. But then ultimately the price of everything went up the year after, didn't it? So the price of everything went up.
Yeah.
So we're told to believe. So when you go to a restaurant now, it's 20% more expensive than it was back then, because the cost of food production.
Yeah, and some of it's smoke and mirrors. I mean, we were doing. Our clients were mainly into the retailers.
Okay.
So if you walk around a supermarket, pretty much anything that's on the shelf, whether it's own label or branded, could have been or would have been a client of the business, and that was always, I suppose, my background. And so from the big brands like Heinz, who we used to work with and do a lot of work for, through to smaller businesses. Sorry, that's not true. Not necessarily smaller, but businesses you might not have heard of, but are huge because they're own label, through to some of the smaller factories or family-owned factories that have really successful products, but only maybe one line or two lines into the retailers. We do a bit of food service, and some stuff that would go into restaurants or quick service restaurants, into say McDonald's or Nando's and things like that as well. But the pandemic was a strange time because some were really busy, some weren't. They were key workers, so they were still working. There was still an appetite to hire. There wasn't as much an appetite to move. I mean, it was just it was a weird time, because again, I remember it well in the phone calls between different recruitment owners, thinking, I've lost so much of my contract book, I need to put so and so on furlough, and I was thinking, I'm in the middle of doing a deal here, and it's like, what, what am I doing?
So yeah, without betraying any confidences, you divulge as much as you feel comfortable with. But so the sales director approached you to buy you out, or how did that come about?
So no, it was the other way around actually. So what had happened is after um, we'd won those couple of awards, we'd got on the radar of some different VC houses and different
Okay.
people, and we'd got inundated as you do with people going to ever thought of doing this, that, and the other, and
Mm.
selling your business, and it was like no, no, no. Fast forward a few more years. By this point, I'd pretty much bought out my old business partner because he'd moved to Scotland. Glenn, Rob, we'd also pretty much bought out. So I owned 80% of it by this point, and they were silent partners way in the background. I'd just give them a quarterly update. They'd come to the Christmas party or the races or whatever, and
Yeah,
all that
the
sort of
fun
stuff.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was having a lot of fun sort of literally running my own show. But we'd got some interest from trade sale and VCs, and I'd had I think I had 3 offers actually, 2 trade, and 1 sort of VC. And the 2 trade, one of them I got quite close with, to the point of sitting in a room with my lawyer, their corporate finance, the chief exec, and sitting around the table trying to thrash out the finalities of heads of terms and what have you. And I walked away from that. A number of reasons. The main one, it didn't feel right, and I just had to trust my gut. They changed a few things at the last minute, and my lawyer, and credit to him, said, "Ian, this doesn't feel right. They're changing stuff that shouldn't be changed here."
Okay. Can you remember specifically what it was?
Yeah, so it was around
Example?
things like my what my role was going to be post deal, what my responsibility were, the influence I'd have on the rest of the business, where Silven sat in that structure, and it had changed to being my role, which I didn't want to go from having worked in a PLC to running my own thing to suddenly just being a number, sort of quite low down. It just didn't sit right, and I was quite clear about that all the way through the process. But for some reason, we sat around the table and it was like, "Oh no, Ian, that's going to be what you're doing." I was like, "Whoa, that's not what we've discussed." And the goalposts kept moving. So little things as well. Other thing actually that's come to mind. I just remember this. Some of the earn out and the post transaction sort of cash that had changed and what needed to be achieved and all. And I was like, I don't. If we agree something, we've agreed it. And if I've got it right or wrong, I've got it right or wrong. But to start changing it at that late stage, it just didn't sit comfortably with me at all. So I bailed out of that. And the VC stuff, I just didn't feel comfortable with what if I left, who would be running it, and the staff. I wanted the staff to, because I was at a really close bond with a lot of them. I'd worked with some of them 15, 20 years, still friends with them now. And so I was really conscious of making sure that if I wasn't there and they wanted to get rid of me for it, say, you're no good anymore, you're too old, get out. That what was left behind was still something that people would enjoy and still be proud in, because you spend a lot of time doing that, really. And I got some good advice from a number of people that just basically said, ask some questions, find out what's going to happen, get some references of other businesses, and credit to the people that told me to, because I wouldn't have done that actually. It just made me too nervous, and so I sort of bottled it and went, nah, I'm not doing that. So fast forward to answer the question is, then what happened is the advisor I had during this process, who was sort of pulling it all like your agent almost.
Yeah.
He said, well, he said, I think I can get a better deal doing an MBO, leave it with me. And he came back and he said, I definitely can. Because we'd always been very clean in all our books from day one. And I say to people now, I had a meeting yesterday, is because we'd come from a PLC background and we had management accounts every month, and we had proper budgets, and and it was quite stiff, but it was brilliant training. Our balance sheet, management accounts, NDO accounts, people were always like, wow, these are spot on for a small business, effectively, because it's a small business. So there's always a bit of interest. This is run well. So we never struggled to get, whether it's ID lines, cash, offers, all that sort of stuff. So when my advisor agent went away, I've got you a much better deal. It's not an earn out. it's just deferred consideration. So it's not dependent on the success of the business. We did a few things around. Jez had to have some skin in the game, so we sort of worked around that a bit, and me and him came to some sort of agreements around post-sale and pre-sale and all that, which is fine because it's what you do. But I literally remember ringing him during a lockdown, having endless teams. I just remember I'm just going to ring him and said, "What do you think about this?" I said, "If you don't want to, it's fine." And he was like, he almost bit my hand off, because again, he's like 10 years younger than me, so he's like, "This is opportunity of a lifetime." And he'd worked for me previously at Quantica as well, so I knew him really well. And he was like, "Absolutely." So I sort of weirdly and randomly sort of drove the sale, and he just was like, "Yep, I'm happy with this. I'm happy with this." So I was in quite a fortunate position to sort of pull it all together. So there wasn't a load of negotiation, because I was always conscious of, one, I didn't want to screw the business with loads of debt because I wanted it to trade. Two, I knew I was going to still be in it for a couple of years as a handover period. And so, you don't want to go from a business that's completely debt free and, got a number of runners out and, it's running itself almost at this point, to one that's so hamstrung by debt that it can't do anything, it can't make any decisions. So I wanted to make sure that sat right in terms of both the deal, the payout, the earn out, the deferred consideration. And actually, I don't know whether everyone felt like this, but I sort of knew what my worth was, what the business's worth was, and that I'd probably reached my sort of limit at the time of thinking, actually, can I take it any further? It was during COVID. I hated COVID. I hated lockdown. I like being around people, and I loved being in the office. And I really struggled through the whole of lockdown, just sort of staying in the house and looking at screens. And it's all very good for 2 or 3 weeks, but when you're a year in, it's just it wasn't great. But during that period of going through the negotiations and the legals and all that, again, a friend of mine, Sarah, who subsequently sold her business, done brilliantly well, Fruition. In respect to her, she said to me, she actually went, "Simo, you need some advice here." She said, "You're going too quick." She basically went, "Slow down." She went, "Slow down, take some advice, because you don't know what you don't know here."
Okay. In terms of the structure of the deal that you were
Structure
putting
of the
together
deal,
effectively for
the structure of the deal. Was it worth it? What we're paying advisors, things like the warranties, things I was tying myself into or out of, the naivety, and possibly the overconfidence of thinking, "Oh, I'll be fine." And having never done it before, and having been a recruiter and being in sales, you think, "Oh, fine. Don't worry about it. It'll work out in the end." And so she sort of said, "She's just slow down." And it was the best advice I ever got. Because I was like a super impatient recruiter. It needs to happen now. It needs to happen yesterday. I was a contract guy there doing all. It's like, no, what's going on? Why can't it happen yesterday? So no, let's just take a breath and let's do this properly. And what does it matter if it takes another week, another month? If it's right, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. And she was right, because there was things that when I got proper advice, it was like, "No, don't do that."
Don't tie yourself up to something. Well, if you're structuring the deal, you should make sure it's kind of on your terms.
But it was some of the things just around, the lawyer advice and just the endless documents that you have to go through, and it's quite a dry subject, a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, it is.
And I'm no legal expert, and it takes a long, and we were doing it all on Teams, and it was knackering. And it's dry, and it's pretty tedious unless you're a corporate lawyer. I suppose that it's your lifeblood. And I was I was not taking initially the full care and attention and taking it as seriously as I needed to. And so I was glad I did slow down, and would it have made a fundamental difference? Possibly not, but it just gave me more comfort that everything had been done properly. It had been done securely. It was right for the business. It was right for me and the two of the shareholders. The deal structure changed a few times. We had a few challenges with Lloyd's,
Is that the bank, the ID facility presumably was it?
No, the
Or?
ID facility was ABN at the
Okay.
time, who were brilliant. And again, advice and to myself, what I should have done is we moved ID facility to close.
Mm.
And when I changed, ABN went, well, why didn't you come and ask us?
Mm.
And I went, I don't know. They went, well, we could have given you a better deal. I went, yeah, it's a good point, that
That's a good
actually.
point. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and to this day, I have no idea why I didn't go and ask them.
Mm.
So these are things that I look
And
back
was
on.
that when you moved over, when the deal was done, you switched ID providers as part of the transaction?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Because they were funding a lot of
Yeah.
it. And
Do you think there was an element of, because I've had this before, you always don't want to tell the bank in case they say, oh, well, now you're selling, like, we'll do something different next week. I don't know.
I think it was all that. I think
Yeah.
it was nerves. I think it was naivety. I
Mm.
think it was getting a bit overexcited that some bank had seen enough in the business and the team and everything to be able to finance it. And I was just completely blinkered. And they may or may not have been interested. I have no idea,
Mm.
but I should have asked.
Yeah.
I should have made it a competitive process
Yeah.
as opposed to one that wasn't. So I just almost like, wow, thank you very much. Almost like, I'm happy that you've said yes. And Lloyd's were just our normal account, and they at one I can't remember what it was. We'd had a it was COVID, so I think we'd had a C bills that we hadn't used, and it was just sitting there
Mm.
on the account, and it was all still there. And they just wanted first charge on this, that, and the other from memory. And Close were like, well, no, we want it.
Mm.
And I was like, well, I don't really understand this.
Yeah.
And this is where my naivety was until we looked into it, and it was like, right, okay, this is what we need to do. And that took some serious unpicking.
Did you basically pay it back, the C bill?
Just paid it all back in the end, and just to get rid of it, because we hadn't used it.
Had the exact same thing when we sold work, the exact same thing. We'd done the same, taken it down, drawn it down, and the funders that were funding the transaction on the buyer's side said, yeah, we just listen. It was almost like counterintuitive. There was like £500,000 there. Why wouldn't you want it? But
Yeah.
it was all the warranties and who had charge over what that caused a problem. So yeah, exactly the same.
Yeah, and again, this is stuff you learn as you go, I suppose.
Yeah.
And if I'd have
Yeah.
probably had better advice at the beginning, or not if I'd have taken or sought better advice at the beginning, I could have got over that a lot quicker, because that caused a lot of stress. That caused a lot of phone calls and going backwards and forwards. And because actually the contact at Close, he sort of knew, but he was like, this won't be a problem. So when he was like, I'm absolutely amazed this is a problem, to the point that he even phoned the guy at Lloyd's on our behalf and said, what's the issue here? And it was just a case of, well, it is what it is. And so that was super stressful, and that was unnecessary stress that could have been foreseen, really.
And like you say, sometimes the things that you foresee being an issue, you get over really quick, and then these things pop up. Yeah, that's always the way. So just picking a couple of the bits you talked about there, Ian. So your role post the transaction. So you said that as certainly one of the deals that was presented to you, you weren't comfortable with what they were expecting you to do. For people listening who are in that position of perhaps thinking about doing a transaction, what would your advice be to them in terms of the thought process for you? Like you say, you've run a business.
Yeah.
It's been yours.
Yeah.
Whether it's VC or trade, what would you advise them to be thinking? What sort of questions should they be asking themselves in terms of what happens post transaction?
So it's interesting, really. So when I was going through the process, and people, friends that knew, and even people at Close and advisors, that everyone would say, "What are you going to do after?" And I was like, "Well, I'll worry about that after." And that was stupid, because after comes really quickly. So the advice I would give people really is, when you're putting the deal together, to be really clear on what your role's going to be if you're staying involved. So we sort of discussed that, but not really. It was very woolly, and for 2 or 3 months, nothing really changed. In that nothing changed. People sort of knew, didn't know, and you wouldn't have known there'd been a fundamental change in ownership of the business. But rightly, it wasn't mine anymore, and it was the sales director's. So he wanted to start putting his own stamp on it, completely understandably and rightly so. But we'd not discussed any of this, and it just sort of, it ended being a bit of a grey area and ambiguous for a bit. And and we muddled through, I would say.
Was
So
there frustration on either side at that point?
yeah, both
Yeah.
sides, yeah. And I suppose part of it was me having to give something up.
Mm.
Almost, I suppose, like your child leaving home and sort of letting go of the reins a bit and thinking, well, I'm not used to this.
Mm.
And part of him from him thinking, Ian, get out of the way.
Mm.
And again, in his shoes, he was right. So my advice would be understand what your job's going to be, understand what's expected of you, even things to how often you're going to be in the office.
Mm.
What role are you going to perform? How are we going to communicate this to the team? What's the internal messaging, the external messaging? Do you get paid? What do you get paid? Understand what, because you become a proper employee, really. So how does that look? You go from running your own business, and I never filled in a holiday thing, to suddenly, do I have to tell you when I'm on holiday, or
Yeah.
do I? These are things that I'd never thought of. So it's quite important that if you are going, if you're lucky enough to get your cash and walk into the sunset, don't worry about it. Worry about how you're going to do that. But even then, you've got to think about what you're going to do, because after becomes quite quickly, and you need to have a purpose. And everyone told me that, but I thought, yeah, it'd be fine. But you do. But if you're going to stay, you definitely need to know what you're going to do. And the if it's VC, understand what your role is and where you sit in the structure, and what the earn out means, and do you have any, like the trade sale, some of the incentives weren't going to be based on how well Silven performed, but how well other parts of the group performed. And I was like, well, that's out of my control if I'm, and I thought, I'm not doing that. I didn't mind doing that when I was 15 years younger and part of a PLC, but I'm not doing that now. So
Yeah.
those bits I think are super, super important. But the main one is, what's your job? What are you getting paid? What does it mean? Do I report to you now? Haven't you reported to me, or am I on the same level, or am I just special projects? Am I in the background and you're going to call on me? And we didn't sort that properly.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I think that is one of those things that when you're doing a transaction for the first time, you do think, because everything else in your career has kind of gone broadly, in an upward trajectory. So you kind of think, I'll deal with it at the time. And then you get to the other side of it. And certainly for the first time for me, it was like, but I know I didn't think that you meant that type
Yeah.
thing. And then they think about that. So it's one of those things that I think sometimes having the conversation will flush out whether there's any, there's going to be any misunderstandings. And you've had the conversation, and then you can either say, yeah, that's for me, or no, it's not for me, really. So that's really good. And I think the other thing I picked up from what you told us before was management reporting. So financial reporting was really key. You brought it from your Quantica days, sort of thing. What are the building blocks would you say makes a business attractive to a potential seller? So financial information, I've talked about this before, absolutely crucial. If you can sit in front of somebody and give them your numbers and be clear on what your GP is and clear what GP per head is, I think that jumps you forward in a queue, and people go, okay, this guy knows his numbers. What other bits would you say made it attractive as a potential? Because you said you were approached by people, so clearly there was other things that were attracting them.
I think the niche we're in is attractive. I think if you've got a strong niche, and you're a recognised brand within that niche, because the niche we're in, the food and drink manufacturing sector, only employs 400,000 people in the UK, and the majority of those are blue collar, and we didn't do any blue collar. It was all white collar, factory managers, engineering managers, technical R&D, day rates 350 to 1,200 quid a day, good margins, salaries 35, 40k upwards. So it was middle to senior stuff. So there was an attraction from the people we spoke to about, one, the importance of our niche to the UK economy, because it really isn't going anywhere, because you can't outsource chilled food, and the transportation costs for these things. So there was a real attraction to that. The numbers are super important, and I talk to a lot of people that both your financial numbers, but your metrics, your visibility, your forecasting, how accurate have your forecasts been over time, and how accurate can you forecast? I mean, having a contract book and knowing things like what your average margin is, your average contract length, your +7, your +30, is really, really important. And being able to demonstrate that and that growth over time, I think that makes you stand out. But then I think if you take it to the level below, being fully aware of the sort of management metrics about the efficiency of your team, of the ability to say, I know that we need to generate X number of vacancies to generate an average fee of Y to hit this forecast, and it's this for perm, this for contract. And if you're data driven in that way, your recruitment, which is an emotional game, and it is an emotional business, but if you're driven by the data and the numbers and know them, I think that makes you stand out. And if your decisions are
Yeah.
based on that data, both financial data, but the MI that you get around the running of your business, I think you're starting off on a really strong base. And as with any business, if you've got monthly recurring revenue over a period of time, and your average contract length is say 7 months, and your day rate is whatever, 100, 120 quid, and whatever it may be, you can have very confident conversations about your cash flow and what you need and where your perm averages are, and like you say, what your GP per head is for contract, for perm. But even simple things, but they're not simple things because not everyone does them, but just a good P&L every month. It doesn't have to be a fancy management account set for like a huge PLC, but a strong P&L with a balance sheet. A good accountant is worth their weight in gold. And we were super lucky as our accountant that was she was brilliant. And that made a huge difference to even being able to talk confidently about your bank charges, your ID charges, your drawdown fees, and you elevate yourself to being 7-8 million turnover. It's like, so what to a bank? Just actually, these guys understand how it runs and how it works. They don't have to unpick everything. Because I think as soon as you have to start unpicking stuff, people lose interest.
I think what you said there about the metrics is because obviously you and I have been talking recently to sort of a sort of shared client, and I think when you made it dead simple by saying, you mentioned emotion. I think that's really interesting because as a recruiter, you can kind of be like, well, oh, that person's not done this and that other person's not done that. In reality, if your metrics of, phone calls to whatever, or approaches, it doesn't always phone calls these days, it might be LinkedIn approaches, but your approaches to, CVs, to CVs sent out, to interviews, stuff like that. Actually, if you follow that model and do the right things based on your conversion rates, it adds up to the right thing invariably. I guess we all kind of think some of us are better salespeople than others, but in reality, if I work harder than you, I'm probably going to do a better. We're probably achieve more sales in the long run. There might be 1 month where it doesn't work, but actually, if I'm consistent in what I do, then it adds up to the right thing, and that's what you kind of made perfectly clear.
And I think consistency is another thing as well, because you mentioned there, because everyone can have a good month in any type of sales environment, but I prefer consistency, because you can't budget or forecast for someone that's going to do 1 good month and nothing for 3 and 1 good month. And actually, I don't want that. I want consistency. You want recruitment is this a bit, but you want it to be evened out a bit more. You don't want it to be big spikes and huge troughs. You want a degree of consistency, and that's where the figures come in. That's where the metrics come in. That's where the data, and there's a lot of data these days. But I mean, if I go back to 96 when I started, some of the first training I had was around the numbers, the metrics, the efficiencies.
Even back then, yeah.
And it was the only way, really, because there was no tech at that point. So, God, there's no mobile phones. We're faxing and sending CVs. But we were measured on those every week. And so I used to know what my efficiency was, what my average fee was, how many jobs I needed to take on to get a fill, to how many interviews I needed to arrange. So it was almost ingrained in me. And nothing's really changed that much, because you still need to arrange interviews if you want to get a fee. And you still need some jobs. So how many do you need?
Still need some candidates
exactly,
into those jobs. So financial reporting, being in a niche, which again I've talked before about this subject. I think generalist recruiters are approaching a period where they're going to really struggle. I feel that you mentioned technology. I think technology and automation, those businesses you mentioned don't do blue collar, so let's use blue collar for example. I think there'll be a time when technology, if we're not already there, technology automation will start driving real efficiencies through a lot of businesses, and actually there'll be some really good people managing that, but actually be technology driven. At the other end of the scale, you'll have your real specialists, so the people who are adding value to their clients away from just recruitment. So they're talking to their clients about what's happening in the industry, trends, what's coming up, such that recruitment's almost it's almost secondary to the relationship, but recruitment's kind of it just happens naturally. I think those generalist recruiters who are not efficient enough or even cheap enough,
Yeah.
dare I say it, to do this bit, and they haven't got the expert knowledge to do this bit, we'll start to find that if it's not already happening, the business has been eroded from both sides. So I think I've heard that a couple of times
Yeah.
now, that being an expert in your field is key, and probably even more key going forward.
Yeah, and I think it gives you the ability to move quickly.
Mm,
And you, I think the tech and the automation and things that come, I think it's brilliant, and it should be embraced, because why wouldn't you? But it needs to be embraced in the right way, and it should be embraced from the point of view of adding value to your business and increasing your turnover, your GP, and your profit, not so you work less, or
yeah,
not so you don't have to work as hard
yeah,
and expect it to make you more money. You should still work as hard, and it should just be the bit on top.
mm,
But I think true niche recruiters that know their subject matter, know their market, and can speak the language properly, will do well whilst adapting things like the tech and the automation. And I think that there will always be buyers out there that are interested in that. And we used to come across the odd generalist in our, and they're still there now, but they never lasted, because either the recruiter left, the business got a bit bored of it. They never saw the size of the prize, really, because 2 recruiters in office in Bristol it is not that exciting to, I don't know, I say Michael Page, but I use them more from the point of view of the first name that came to me, but it's not that exciting. So, but if you're a niche with a strong track record, that's interesting to other businesses.
So financial results, niche
Yeah.
experts. What about people? What you're looking for in the people in your business to make it, again, just specifically attractive for sale, but presumably the right people produce a sort of business that, sort of the results that you were doing anyway, which is going to make it attractive for sale.
Yeah, so I mean, if I've been lucky through my career. A lot of the people I've worked with for a long time, and some followed me from Crossley House to Quantica to Silven. Not just me and Glenn, on that journey, and still are really good friends now. Actually, go on holiday with them and all that sort of stuff. So, I've made some of my closest friends through recruitment, both people I've worked alongside for me and all that sort of stuff. So I think you need to find your tribe. But I couldn't sit here and say I've not made loads of mistakes with people I've hired. But the people that are in your business, because recruitment is a people business, have to live your values, have to have the integrity you've got. And that is different for each leader and each person. And I'm not saying mine's right or theirs is right. It's just you've got to know yourself. And when I look back over my time at Silven and even at Quantica, the times I chased what I thought was easy money, or bought in what I thought was a superstar, have never worked. It just didn't work for me. It didn't work for me. And whether that was we got it wrong, they got it wrong, I don't know. But the people for any recruitment business, especially when you're selling it, and you're going through that process, have to trust you. Otherwise, they're just going to up sticks and leave on day one. And they have to be pleased for you, I think, as well. Because if they're resentful, again, they're going to run off and do their own thing.
And do you think is a particular, we've talked before about, some people have had success with graduates, some people have had success with second job people, whether I think Joe Selleck described the people who came from, perhaps worked at McDonald's before, so they've had a job, they've had to get up in the morning, sort of go and do it, and then the second job is recruitment, they sort of do it. Is there a profile of people who work for your business?
So, is there a profile?
Not the superstars, you mentioned, not the superstar.
Yeah, no,
Ronaldo who comes in and...
Some of them became superstars, but some of the best people I recruited that are still working in it now, on paper, there was no reason to recruit them.
Okay. What did you see in them then? What interview?
I don't know. Maybe I'm thinking of a few people here, and I'm smiling because, and I've said this to their face. Some of the people that have had some of the worst final interviews, I've ended up hiring, and they've ended up being brilliant. And to this day, you would go, "Why did you take them based on that interview?" And it's just because you felt something and you trusted your gut at that point. That I think they've got something. And people talk about second jobbers, they talk about people in sports teams, they talk about people that maybe come from backgrounds that need to prove something. But I think it's it's a mixture of all of that, really. I think the fear of failure is a huge motivator. And I never liked people that just talked about money all the time, because I'm not interested. Because there's always someone richer than you, and there's always someone chasing the next book. You don't let people down. You don't want to do yourself a disservice, and you want to be the best version of yourself. And the beauty of recruitment, I always think and still think, is it's sort of down to you, really. And you can moan about this, that, and the other, but you're the person that's going to put the effort in, and the numbers don't lie over a period of time. And it should be, in my opinion anyway, a meritocracy. It's completely meritocratic, because you can be a graduate 12 months in and be the top biller and overtake someone that's been there 10 years. And there's not many industries where you can come in, work really hard, listen, be a sponge, put yourself out there, make some mistakes, and then overtake people that have been there 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years. And it's not just a time-based industry. And I love that. And so some of the people now think if they came in at 21, 22, some of them fresh grads, actually, very little work experience, but we just see the hunger to prove something, and to put the effort in. And I would always back someone that was putting the effort in, hitting the numbers I ask them to hit, doing that. And if they're not billing, I'm not bothered, because I think it will come good. And I still say to this day, and it's been said on, I think other podcasts and so on that have said this. When I was on with Gary on Points of View, we talked about it in that if the metrics you're asking people to be measured by being hit, but they're not hitting the revenue, that's on me, not on you. But if they're not being hit, that's on you. So I'm happy if you're hitting them. So I need to help you more. And it'll come good. And as you said before, I think it does come good. And over time, one of the first guys I ever worked with, actually, who set up on his own before I did, Glenn backed him for 6-9 months, and he'd hardly struck a bat. But he was working so hard and doing everything that needed. And Glenn went out at him and said, he'll be fine. And he was a great biller, because he was just doing the right things. And he refused. He just kept going and kept going. And that's why I love recruitment, really, because you can't make it up. You can't hide over time. Everyone goes, it's all full of blaggers. But it's sort of not. You can't stay in the industry for a long time if you're a blagger. You've got to be good, and you've got to put the effort in and do the relentless nature of the job, because it is relentless.
That's great, Ian. Thank you. So financial reporting, really key. Having your people measured against those metrics, they understand what's expected of them. You're measuring that and helping them where they're hitting the metrics you're expecting them, but the results not there. You're helping them consistently. They know you're helping them. And like you say, that finding people who feel like they want to put that work in. Again, we talked before about the modern way of recruiting and people asking in interviews now, kind of what's in it for them. I find that that can stick in the throat a little bit, I think, given sort of the backgrounds perhaps we've had before, but it is the modern way, and it is the modern way of showing the individual what's in it for them. And I think recruitment's great for that, because actually if you show them, yes, you have to do these things, and yes, you can have your dress down days we talked about before, and yes, you can have your working from home policy or flexible working, but actually if you put these in and listen, let me help you, this is what you can achieve. And like you say, I'm not sure there are too many industries that can do that in the quite formulaic way that I think recruitment can.
You got to trust the process as well, and it's getting people to, believe you that don't worry, it's fine. Trust the process, stick to the plan. Don't have to change. Don't magpie around left, right, and centre. Trust the process, and over time, with a bit more experience and as you grow as a person, and you get people think, oh, so and so they did it, and you get advocates across the business that go, I thought I was like you, and I never thought this would work, and look at it now. And contracts are, I think, the biggest thing around that, because it takes a while to get your book going, and it's really hard, and it can be quite lonely if you're with a load of perm recruiters that are banging in 10 grand deals and you haven't got any jobs on, and you're talking about 100, 120 pound a day, 70 pound, whatever it may be. It can be quite lonely at first, until you trust the process, and you're suddenly 2 years in and you've got X number of runners, and your GP per week's nice and healthy, and the perm recruiters start looking across to the contract recruiters going, well, that's not fair. You're starting the month on.
Yeah, start the month already
Yeah,
ahead,
yeah.
already ahead. So we've talked a couple of times about sort of working hard. So just to change tact a little bit. So thinking about the build up to the sale, a couple of years before that, you're working sort of lots of hours. What was your work life balance like
So
at
it
that time?
by that time actually, so when we first started, it was full on. I was billing, I was running the desk, growing contract, but I loved it. So I would never look back now and go, I was working too hard, because actually I really enjoyed it.
So, but you had your oldest son, so about
I'll do some.
2 or 3 years
It was
old.
2 years
Yeah.
old. We moved from Leeds day before his second birthday, actually, randomly. So that's why I remember it. So, and like I said, my wife was commuting over to Hull. We were dropping him at nursery, and I was having to leave centre of town at 4:45 to get the train to pick him up from nursery. He was often the last one there to be picked up, which the guilt levels. I mean, one, he can't remember now because he's 15 and hardly speaks, but and two, he's having a great time.
Yeah.
But the guilt levels as a parent when you're the last parent to pick up is quite tough. And you think people are judging you as well, or I did, and I don't know why I cared, but you sort of do if you're always the last one there. But I thoroughly enjoyed those times because it was full on. I remember being at Centre Parks, even with mum and dad, speaking to candidates, clients, had interviews going on, having to go and walk around sort of whilst they're all having a meal outside, just trying to sort all these things out. I remember even having to leave Jack's sort of nativity thing actually at nursery because I was sorting out a contract deal basically, and I've been trying to get hold of this person for ages, and they rang me right in the middle. So I really need to take this. So all those things that at the time, should I have done? I don't know, but I felt as though I needed to because I knew what we were trying to do. And luckily, well, one, like I say, I don't think your kids are going to remember anyway, and they're just doing a thing. My wife understood what we were trying to do.
I was going to say, yeah. How was your partner?
Yeah,
your wife?
she was fine. I mean, she was working really hard actually, and commuting a long way. She got a job in Skelmersdale after that, which was still not close. So the two of us were understood that if one, it was something I've always wanted to. Two, she supported that 100%, and full credit to her. But she had always had a career as well where she'd worked, and she still does now. So it wasn't something that was, and I'd always been worked like that anyway before at Quantic. So this was nothing new. It was just this time the way justify, is that the right word? Justify my own head was this time it was my own business, so I felt as though I had to. And I think when you start, you've got to lead from the front. I think if I fast forward towards the end, before COVID kicked in, and all that nonsense, the business was well structured by that point. I'd bought out Glenn, and Robert, and Glenn and Rob were just silent partners. They owned 10% each. I'd got my structure in place with my sales director, my head of perm, my head of contracts, all really good guys, doing great jobs actually, and still in the business industry now, and doing very well for themselves. So the business was sort of running itself, and I turned into an accountant pretty much, which is the last thing I ever wanted to be. I mean, I didn't even join my accounting course at university. It was so boring, but I'd sort of ended up being an accountant.
Yeah.
I was like, how's this happened? I enjoy speaking to clients and going on meetings, and I'm now looking at numbers and ID costs and all this sort of stuff.
This was what once you had in mind on a sale, you would kind of look at these things.
This was I'd sort of made myself redundant a bit by this point. So, but I was still going in, but I didn't have the impact apart from being sort of the figurehead that I used to have, because I wasn't running the teams, I wasn't running the books, it wasn't my clients, I didn't know the jobs. And I think that makes you attractive to a sale as well, is if you're the owner of the business and you're not key to the sales, you're not key to the clients, you're not key to the candidates, you don't know the company you've just placed with all the candidate. I think that is super important. If you're the owner and still the main biller, the main client owner, and the main person looking after all those relationships, really the value is just you, not the business.
Yep.
And I'd move myself consciously or subconsciously away from that. So me not being involved had no material impact on any revenue whatsoever. Hence my impact was just looking at numbers and asking questions, going around the office, you know, doing what a leader should do, saying that well done as much as possible, congratulating people, trying to make it a good place to work, get the environment right, picking people up when it shouldn't. If the environment isn't right, picking that up, making sure that, all the hygiene factors really of a business are on point. But materially, I had no huge impact on the day-to-day performance
And
of the
I
business.
think that's a really important point, because I think it gives you options then, doesn't it? It
Yeah,
gives you, on an exit, it gives you the option potentially to stay on and not reinvent yourself, but fulfill a role that
yeah,
the buyer wants to do, or it gives you the option to walk away. Now
yeah,
you didn't do that. You stayed on for 2 years, which presumably agreements. The first year still fairly
yeah.
involved. One thing you did mention before though, Ian, was for the first couple of months, nobody had known it would sort of happen. How did you announce it? What was the communications like, staff and clients?
I don't think we did it very well.
Okay.
Um, and that was probably me not wanting to release the reins, to be honest, if I look back.
Were you worried about what people think?
Yeah, definitely. I'm worried about what people think internally, externally. I was worried about the change in my status. And, you suddenly seen differently. You suddenly go from, it's what is really funny is you even these days you're on LinkedIn, you own a business, recruitment business, you get loads of people that want to be your friend, sell you stuff, come to this, come to that. You suddenly you find out who your friends are, because when you're no longer that person in the business, you're like, oh right, you weren't that interested in talking to me. You just wanted some cash, or you wanted. So that was a really interesting sort of change that I've noticed. But I think we didn't communicate it well, and that was 100% on me. I don't think we were super clear on what we were trying to achieve with the whole thing. Externally, it was just. I'm not sure we even told people that well externally. I just think it was a bit muddled.
Yeah.
Told the managers first. I'm not sure they understood what it meant for them before we told the staff. When we told the staff, did they understand it? Did we make it clear enough? Did we explain how the process was going to go? I just don't think we handled it very well. And had my time again, I'd handle that very differently. I'd understand what my role was. I'd understand where the business is going in the next 12, 18 months. I'd be able to communicate that so people had visibility, so they didn't start going, well, why didn't you say that? Or is my job okay? Or what does that mean for me?
Yeah.
Because everyone's interested in themselves, understandably, and what it means for them. And I think we fudged it.
Do you know, again, on the first transaction I did, exactly the same. Exactly the same. I think I justified being a bit woolly with what I said by saying I didn't want to unsettle anybody.
Yeah,
In
yeah.
reality, I think it was an ego thing.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think look back now, and I think it was me sort of not wanting to relinquish the reins, as you said. So I ended up sort of giving half a story, and then years later, people that I'm still friends with say, Matt, why didn't you tell us? Like, why didn't you tell us? Because we could have handled it. But actually, the uncertainty around, oh, it's this merger, as we present it, it's like it was woolly, and people were looking at me, sort of thinking. I think I had a level of goodwill and trust that meant that people didn't all
Yeah.
bail. But actually, I think if it, the organisation perhaps been bigger, or perhaps hadn't had such a good couple of years before that, I think that could have been really disastrous, actually. So yeah, just telling the truth, I think is the tip there.
And just the I think nobody talks about that communication when you're going through certainly the people I was speaking to, it was always about what you're going to do and what's this, not what's the comms internally, what's the comms externally, what's the messaging, because it becomes old news so quickly, and people move on with their lives and so on, that it means more to you really. And like I said, we got it wrong, we overthought it, but we fudged it, and I'd do that differently.
How did you feel when the money hit your bank account? Can you remember?
Again, another mistake that I made is, for some strange reason, I thought it'd be really good to do it mid-month on the day of the Cheltenham Gold Cup. So I thought this would be really good. Do it on the day of the Gold Cup. I'll be lucky day. I might win the bet on the Gold Cup. So I never win a bet on the
You didn't put all
Gold
the
Cup.
money on a bet, did
No,
you?
and I rarely bet, but it's like and all that. And I mean, that was why do it mid-month. Don't know why. When most of our invoices got paid at the end of the month, chasing money and all that. I mean, I don't know why I blame COVID, but it was just me doing it mid-month. Wait to the end of the month when it's all there. Do it on the 30th, and life is a lot simpler. So, if truth be told, it was just a sense of relief and I was knackered.
Mm.
Um, I didn't feel loads, and actually, I felt more proud of getting through the process and happy to be able to phone up Rob and Glenn and say, look, this is it. Because,
Mm.
you know, they'd both recruited me as a straight grad,
Mm.
literally a straight grad, 21-year-old kid. For me to then be able to, many years later, flip it and go, this is nice payback for you guys as well for backing me when literally it was a punt back in 96. Fast forward to 2021. That felt great. Be able to thank a few people that had helped me along the way and ring them up. That was great. But sort of the money, it sort of, one, it was a relief, and then two, it sort of, if I'm honest, felt a bit weird and scared me a bit. It's like, I don't really, this isn't really sort of me. So
Yeah.
it's like, so it just sort of, it was like, okay, let's, celebrate, and then what's next?
Yeah.
So I never had any great plans for sort of doing anything, and even to this day, I'm not very good at spending. One, I'm not that flash. I'm not that good at spending money. Me and my mate are going to the test match tomorrow, and it was funny. We've got offered these tickets to a friend of mine, other tickets in this hospitality, and they're dead cheap. I was like, yeah, but I've already spent sort of 60 quid.
Yeah.
So and my wife's the same as well. She's completely understated, and I think that's worked well.
Yeah. Again, it's almost uncanny that the sort of the characteristics that come through when we're talking to people. It's almost like there's the money's secondary to the pride of having achieved something,
Yeah.
and actually what it means for other people. A
Yeah.
couple of people have said, including you, what this means for other people. It's a feeling of they've given me an opportunity, or I've worked with them, and we are where we are because of the people who've worked around us, and they're going to benefit from it. So
Yeah.
it's really heartwarming, I think, to hear that, really, because you do, again, you often think of recruitment as money, and people are trying to get to the next
Yeah.
month, and commission, all that sort of thing, and when you hear owners that have built businesses that say actually it was the pride, bit of relief of from that initial fear of failure, taking 5 people into Manchester to achieving an exit, and passing the reins on to somebody else that you really trust and you think is going to do a good job. I think it's really it is heartwarming. That's the only way I can think of it, really.
And it's priding the people you've worked with as well, and also as I'll come back to the start, we always wanted, Glenn and I, we talked about it, pride in the badge, and it's nice to sort of complete that circle, to have the pride in the badge that other people had a value of it, because we all think we have a value in ourselves, our businesses, our own sort of abilities, and you often overplay that or underplay it. But for someone else to almost go, actually, there is some value in that. There's a huge amount of pride, hard work, and it is nice to ring people. Even if I remember ringing my mum up, and she's like, "Oh, that's great," and it's nice to do that. And it's not. If you do, I stick to this. If you come into recruitment and go, it's all about the money. I want the money. I want the money. I want this. You won't succeed. Do a good job, work hard, and everything else will look after itself. And
The money comes,
really will. If you chase an easy dollar, won't happen.
You mentioned a purpose there, in terms of people that had previously been sort of in regular contact. Perhaps it becomes less regular, sort of thing. So how did that feel?
That was weird, naively, and probably my ego felt, oh yeah, they want to speak to me because they want to speak to me or whatever, and then suddenly the invites stop. You're not invited to certain meetings or different networking events or this, that, and the other, and you're suddenly like, oh, I'm still, nothing's changed in like 24 hours a week, a month, and that I found quite difficult, actually. And it was quite lonely, that at first, finding that purpose, finding a new tribe, finding people that either have been through the journey of other things. That was harder than I thought it was going to be.
So had you given yourself, so you did a year where you were fairly involved, then a year where it was kind of like, you were in the periphery, I think, in your own words.
Yeah.
Did you plan for, and presumably gradually your influences, not waning, but your influences, you're taking a step back a bit by bit. Did you ever plan for finishing fully? What about that last day? Did you have a plan for what was going to look like after living Silven for walking out the door for the last time?
Not really. It was quite a weird ending in some respects, because we knew it was coming to an end, and so I'd put a proposal together to say, this is how I think I can because I could still see the business needed some help and maneuverings and whatever. And so I put a proposal together for me to leave, but started doing some consultancy non-exec work for it on a basis like I was planning to do with other businesses. But Jez, understandably, and I do get this, sort of didn't want to do that because I'm still around and people would still see me as the boss. So completely get why he wouldn't want me around, really. And so it was a weird end, really, because it was almost like, right, so should I finish? And it was the end of November, like the week after. And he said, well, why don't you finish next Friday? And I was like, oh. So I was like, well, is that it then? Well, do I need to come back in? Well, no. So is that it?
Yeah.
And I sort of went, oh. And so I went round to him, I'll see you later. And then went out after the Christmas, whatever. But it was weird. It was just like, that was it. There was no big anything. It was just, I walked out and rode off into the sunset almost. And it was just, it was a nothing ending.
Yeah.
If I'm honest. And it sort of helped that it was December, stuff going on in December, blah, 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 very social and all that sort of stuff. But then when that's done, you're into January and it's like, oh.
Yeah, January's a tough month, isn't it? Yeah, and if you've just left you sort of your baby behind, and it's
it's weird, and it's like, and I know other friends of mine that have sort of been through it, and they go, "What's the best day?" Is like when you sell. What's the worst day? The day after, because it's like, what's next? And it was sort of like that in January for me, because I was like, I'm not sure what who am I? What am I going to do? And what's going on? And that was weird, and that took some getting used to. And that, and I'm not a great one for banging stuff on LinkedIn all the time. I need to do more of it, and I tell people to. But I was like, I need to get some work here because I want to work. So I'm like, what was I, 48 or whatever, 47, 48, and I was like, I still need to do stuff. I'm got loads of energy. I want to do things. I'm not into playing golf every day or anything. It's like I want to do stuff. And that took some time. That did, to get myself out there and start speaking to people and getting clients on board and starting working with people. And fast forward to now, it's brilliant because I know it's taken probably 2 years to get to a place where I know what my purpose is, I know what my role is, I know what I can do, I know what I want to do. I never work from home because I hated it. I hated it in COVID. So I make sure that I'm out the house every day and I go and I get my laptop and I love it. And it's brilliant, but it took a good 18 months to find my sort of a new tribe of people and a new purpose and a new outlook and I knew what my value was as well, because you don't think about it, and suddenly you're sitting there and you go, right, so home's under the hammer.
Yeah. And what about, so your wife was happy to have you at home more often? Say 2 years on, you're not at home as often, but and the kids were happy to.
Yeah, I mean it's nice at first, isn't it? You can do. I mean, you can do all that sort of stuff. I don't think it's healthy if you're at home all the time, anyway. If I'm honest, and your kids don't want you at home around them all the time. I don't think it's healthy if you as a family, like around each other 24/7. And it's not healthy for yourself. And I found myself, until I sort of went, right, I need to sort this out. You'd end up doing less and less and less. Because you haven't got a boss and you haven't got anyone saying you need to do less and less and less. And you got to be really careful with that. And so I was very conscious of making sure that, right, okay, I'm not going to do that. Speak to other people, get out and about, do things, plan my diary, make sure I'm still organised. And even back then, it was pretty empty. Whereas now it's not. I mean, this week is, going to Creeks Mob, but it's been full on, and it's like, God, and then next week's full on as well, and I love it. But it's my diary, and I sort it, and I change things around, and the timings, and I can go to the cricket, and you have options and whatever. But it took a while to get used to that, really, because when you are running a business, it is your diary. But I always thought of it as it's sort of the business and everyone else's, because I'm worried about that, and I will be available for that. And then when it flips to actually it's just me and no one's putting things in it, I haven't got a meeting that I've got to go to, or Teams call someone's put in, or someone emailing you saying, Ian, have you got 5 minutes for this? It's a tricky time now at first, and then people talk to you about it, but I don't think unless you've been through it,
Hmm.
people can really advise on that, and it's something that, again, done differently, I would set myself up slightly differently for
Yeah, I
that
was going to say,
exit.
what would you do differently? So I think from my own experience, I thought I was going to play golf. Thought I was going to spend more time with the kids. Maybe go on a few more holidays. That was the full
Yeah,
extent of what I
yeah,
thought about. And like you said it a couple of times to me, everything else had worked out.
yeah,
So why wouldn't this work out? And then you get there, and there's still a hell of a lot of hours left in
yeah,
the week. And I ended up being quite annoying, well, no, more than quite annoying, because I was like going around the house saying, "Why aren't we doing this? Why aren't we
yeah,
doing?" In that sort of 100 mile an hour like you'd been
yeah,
type thing, and it was yeah, and my Helen would say, well, you haven't kind of been here for 10 years,
yeah,
so what
yeah,
what are you sort of talking about? I also think psychologically, you mentioned one thing there about working. One thing I hadn't anticipated was that you get this amount of money in your bank account, and if you're not working, it goes down every month.
yeah, exactly.
Having for 30 years always always sort of stayed the same or gone up. It goes down. It goes down every month, and psychology the psychology of that I found quite difficult
Yeah,
until same as you 2 years in you kind of find some clients and you start
yeah,
working and money starts sort of coming back in. But for 18 months I was doing a bit of work and it wasn't charging for it,
yeah,
and but then you start looking at your bank account and thinking psychologically. So these are little things, like you say, once you've been through it, you
yeah,
can perhaps and you're now, I know, doing consultancy work for people who will one day go and do what you've done. I think having these things, having thought about these things, having thought about what your role would be
yeah,
post transaction, having thought how you feel about how the money and how
yeah,
it's going to go from there. What is your purpose
yeah,
post that? What are we going to do? I think these are things that in your role as a consultant now you'd be able to help people with.
yeah, and I think it's important to think about, because you're right, the bank account will go down and all that sort of stuff, but it's also what's my sort of purpose here, and
Mm,
everyone needs a purpose. I mean, I remember graduating thinking I had a great time at university, loved it, but what's my purpose now?
mm,
And it's like you need to, be around other positive people. You need to be around people you can bounce. Oh, sorry, I do anyway.
mm,
Um, and what I love now is working with people that I really like.
mm,
That I want their businesses to do really well,
mm,
as much as they do. I really want, and
mm,
I love all the businesses because they're so different, and the people are brilliant, and
mm,
I feel part of them. And I've been lucky enough to be invited on incentives and lunch clubs and all this sort of stuff
mm.
because they've gone, "Hey, I want you to come along," been taken to the races and all
Yeah.
this sort of stuff, and I feel part of it, and I'm super passionate about making them
Mm,
um, sort of enjoy it and have as successful businesses. But if I can help in that,
mm,
I get so much value and sort of pride and enjoyment out of it. And if along the way you make some new friends and whatever, which I have done, and you know, recruiters in these businesses, well, they're all great. I bumped into
mm.
one on Sunday playing paddle,
Yeah.
and he's a guy that works for one of my clients, and he's like, "Oh, Ian," and we're
Mm,
chatting and whatever. It's like that's what it's all about,
mm,
and I didn't have that for the first 12 months. So whereas now, different companies and whatever, it is brilliant.
mm,
And I also think that out there in the market now, and one of my bugbears is a lot of sort of snake oil salesmen sort of saying this is what you should be doing and whatever, and I don't like that. I
mm,
think actually recruitment's a brilliant industry, with some fantastic people in it that work really hard, that
mm,
completely value their clients, their candidates, their staff, and there's a lot of really good people that can help, but there's some that are just trying to make a quick buck,
mm,
out of often people that just want a bit of help.
mm,
Um, and so I'm super passionate about people not like getting ripped off with tech, getting ripped off with suppliers, getting because there's so many people who, "Oh, recruitment's easy, it's got a bad name, we'll get an easy bucket," and
mm,
I don't like that sort of stuff.
mm.
And I'm quite sort of keen to sing the praises of the people that work really hard in the industry and want to do better, because I think it isn't easy and it is hard work and it is emotional,
Mm.
um, but it's brilliant.
It's well, I mean, again, talking to you this morning, I can see now the passion. Your legs
Yeah,
are twitching,
yeah,
sort of thinking
yeah.
about
I know.
getting
Yeah,
back to work and
yeah,
stuff like that. The thing, but I think with your experience of the corporate PLC world, a startup, effectively
yeah, yeah,
startup through to exit. Again, an MBO I think is a great story. You had trade offers, you had VCs interested. but actually to sell it to somebody who's been there on the journey with you and be able to take it forward and then stay around and help them, and now look to help other businesses use that experience. As you say, I think there's lots of people talk about the theory of things and how, how things could be done and that sort of thing. Those people who've been there and done it, and made mistakes,
Yeah.
and can say, listen, I'm not saying don't do this. I'm just saying when I did it, this is what
Yeah,
happened.
exactly.
I think it's hugely valuable. And I can see the passion that you've got for doing that for businesses.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of fun as well, and if along the way, people can make some money, enjoy it, and not take it all too seriously, because there's times when I took it too seriously, and I think with time and experience, it's absolutely a serious business, but you don't have to take it seriously, and surround yourself with good people. And that's good consultants, good support staff, good suppliers, good friends. And I think that is worth its weight in gold. And even, these days there's good networking groups and there's good people in those. And I'm fortunate to have met loads of people that, you can call on with a phone call, sort of almost wherever you are in the country or the world, for advice, restaurant recommendations, what bar to go to, golf course to play, whatever it may be. Can you get me tickets for this? And recruitment is full of people that are keen to help.
I think it's one of the, you said one of the nicest things is phoning people up and telling them good news that relates to them. I think one of the nicest things is, that network over the years. When somebody asks you, do you know somebody who does it?
Yeah.
Often for me, it's lawyers. I seem to know every lawyer in Manchester for various reasons, but somebody will say, do you know somebody who does this? And be able to, just pick up the phone and refer somebody in. There's a warm feeling to that.
Yeah.
I think that, we talked about money before. That's something I don't think money can recreate, really. And being able to help people, from a fortunate position that both of us are both in, I think is, certainly what my focus has been of late.
I agree. And Gary was my Ned for a period of time. And we touched on this on his podcast. He always says, be owed a favour, not a fiver. And it's right.
Yeah.
It's about the money.
Yeah.
It's like help people, because you never know when you're going to need it. You never know when you're going to be able to say to someone, actually, I wouldn't mind if could you help me with this, or do you know someone that can do that, or can get hold of that, or I've never been there before. What's it? Little things make a big difference, and he's I think he's bang on. Be owed a favour, not a fiver, is a great way to sort of live your life, as opposed to worrying about giving people cash or whatever.
Fantastic, Ian. That was a thoroughly enjoyable chat this morning. We could carry on for a lot
yeah,
longer,
absolutely.
but I know you've got clients going to see, haven't you? So
yeah, sorry, I can bang on about this for ages. So apologies, but no, brilliant. Really enjoyed it. Thank you for the invite.
Ian, thanks so much.
Thank you. Cheers, Matt.